Well, thanks for coming, guys. My name is James, and then this is my colleague Manny. I'll let him introduce himself as well. So this is our workshop talking about a little bit of an introduction to the industry that we work in, which is sort of you can coming under sport and fitness. So just a bit about sort of who I am. I'm a 23-year-old physio from Southwest London. I sort of have two jobs. It makes me quite busy. I work for the NHS in Hammersmith and Fulham, so seeing a range of different things. So it could be people with bad backs, bad shoulders, absolutely anything. And I also accompany that with some work in semi-professional sports. So I work for a rugby club called the Blackheath Rugby Club as their first team physio. So the two go along quite well, and it allows me to basically work in things that I really enjoy, so sport and helping people get better. I'll let Manny sort of talk about him as well.
So my name is Emmanuel. People call me Manny. I am a physiotherapist and I work for a company called Pure Sports Medicine. So I work in the private sector, which means that it's separate from the NHS. And I also am a Nike running coach. So I look after people who want to start running and I help them get better at running. And I coach them through running as well as looking after their injuries. So I had kind of a few different things here and there. And just going back, I've worked at Fulham with the academy as a physio. And I've also done some work with some other sports teams similar to Blackheath Rugby, so some football teams. And yeah, I really enjoy my job. Cool.
Amazing. So just to sort of start off, really, we just wanted to give you a bit of an idea about sort of how we got where we are. So it's going to be really conversational. I was talking to Manny. Manny, how would you say you got into physio, that sort of sporting industry, or what was your route?
That's a good question. I think James and I were talking, kind of planning this, and we were talking about the difference between health and fitness. And I guess my entry into this was I was playing football and I wanted to play at the highest level. So I was going through a process. I got injured. When I got injured, I couldn't find anybody who could tell me what was wrong with me. So I didn't know what the injury was. So I was questioning everybody and asking, what do you think it might be? Do you think it might be this, that? So it made me interested in the human body. So it made me interested in health rather than fitness. So, so what that means is that when we look at in the NHS, maybe some of the people James will see and treat, he will treat people for their health rather than their fitness, okay? And so I got interested in that and I started doing something called sports therapy, which is a way to look after athletes when they're injured. Because I was an athlete and I was injured, so I wanted to know, how do you look after somebody if they're injured? I did that for 3 years. After that, I wanted to know more, and I wanted to know more about health, so I ended up doing a physiotherapy master's for 2 years. So that's how I got to the end of my kind of studying and ended up as in a career. So that was my journey. But I just got really interested in something, got really passionate about it, and started kind of finding out more, asking more questions, which I think is always good. How about you, James?
So for me, I'm sort of at a sort of different aspects of my career. I've only been qualified for 2 years, so I'm only 23. I went straight to university from school. I sort of knew that I wanted to be a physio. I was also similar to Manny. I was running at quite a competitive level and had a really, really bad injury. So I tore my hamstring, so that's the muscle at the back of your leg. I tore that completely off the bone, which meant that I missed a lot of my running season, which obviously for a 17-year-old was rubbish. And I was thinking, well, what am I going to do with myself? I don't really know what to do. So then I had a really, really good physio at the time, and I was thinking, this sounds quite interesting. So I thought, well, how can I get into that, and what do I need to do to get there? So I was looking at what A-level I was doing. I was doing biology and PE at the time. and sociology. So those things were my sort of route into it. Then when 2015, I went to the University of Nottingham, so sort of just outside London or 2 hours away, and did my physiotherapy degree there, which is obviously from. It was really, really good. Really, really enjoyed it, and it sort of gave me a different aspect for what I thought physiotherapy was. Because I don't know if Manny's the same. When I first heard of physiotherapy, I just thought they were the sporty guys that run onto the pitch and save people's lives or treat someone when they're down injured. And that's only one aspect of it. Physio is quite broad. Physios have a really, really big job in people's day-to-day function. We can help people through sort of sickness, illness, and disability, trying to improve their function. So for me and Manny, obviously we work in our particular sectors, which we class as like the musculoskeletal sector, or MSK. So that's treating people with loads of anything, bony injuries, muscle tears, you name it. But there's loads of different physios and aspects that treat crazy things. So thinking about what's going on in the world at the moment with coronavirus, there's physios working on wards, all of the wards, taking care of those people, and doing what we call respiratory physio, so taking care of their lungs, making sure they're propped up in bed quite nicely. So there's loads of different routes and aspects you can go into, and it all sort of comes into, and not just treat that one thing. You do see the injury, you do see that one person, but you're also seeing everything else that's going on around them, and how what you're saying to them and the things that you're doing might impact on that. I don't know what Manny might have to
add. So I'd probably say that you've kind of summarised it really well. I did work on the wards, so I worked in hospitals for 2.5 years. I think that was a good route to allow me to experience lots of different things. So as James has just explained, I worked in the respiratory unit, like a respiratory ward, looking after people who had any lung conditions and helping them with their oxygen. And from there, we looked at asking people to start walking. So the first few days when they wanted to start walking, physiotherapists would be the ones to help them. And it was a really rewarding job, because you get to see somebody who was in bed and they found it really hard to sit on the edge of the bed, to walking, and then they leave the hospital. So you follow them the whole way through, just like with an athlete. And I know James probably sees quite a few people from the beginning when they have lots of pain to them getting back to their sport. I'd say, for you, James, would you say that's one of the things that you really kind of enjoy about the job?
Yeah, I think you do get to see people from the sort of first stage, really, when someone comes in to see you and they're in loads of pain, and you're thinking, all right, what am I going to do? This person's really sore, this pain's been going on for ages. How am I going to have an impact on them, not only treating the injury, but relating to them as a person? And I think that's the beauty of physio, because you can, obviously you have a job to treat that person, but at that time, you're speaking to them, you're getting to know them, and you're building that sort of patient clinician working relationship, which is really important. And I feel like that can improve your outcomes as a clinician, and that's something that can extend even into your social background. Because if you can hold a conversation with someone, you're able to speak well, and you're able to relay what you think to someone else, that's a really, really good skill to have, because it will allow you to sort of understand how your words might be impacting on other people. And that's something that I think is really important, not only in physio, but sort of in the wider population, which I'm sure Manny agrees with as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always ways that we can use our communication to encourage somebody, reassure them, all those important things that are needed from a physiotherapy patient relationship. So when you're a physiotherapist and you have a patient, there's always an element where you need to try and build a bond, and that helps. You're a team, basically. So that team is really important to try and develop the best results. And the best results are depending on what the team choose as a goal. And yeah, I think the key thing with physio, it's there's a lot more to it than as James and I probably thought. There's a lot more to it than running on the pitch and working with athletes. There's a whole health side which is really, really useful, and athletes need to be healthy first. Anybody in sport needs to be healthy first before they become fit for their sport. So it's really important that we think about those two aspects because they do work together. And I think it's an exciting thing when you get to that point where you're starting to work with people and the challenges and the way you kind of develop through the profession. So
Manny, what would you say you're the biggest difference you find between sport and fitness is when you're treating people, or depending on the patients that you see?
I think when we think about sport, it's very specific. So you want to be able to run a marathon, so you will need to run something close to the distance. So you want to get to a point where you're really covering those miles. Whereas fitness, you want to be able to achieve everything you can in your day and feel happy and feel that you have energy. That's fitness. Fitness is a way of living that allows you to have more reserves, so you don't feel exhausted at the end of the day. Does anybody get to the end of the day and they're really tired? No? Yes?
Yeah, I do for sure.
Sometimes. So that's something we can build your fitness on. So we can build and develop a little bit of your fitness so that it gives you more, we call it kind of like energy reserve. So the fitter you are, the more energy reserve you have to be able to achieve what you can in your day. So with sport, we want to be really specific. As James, which position did you play in rugby?
So when I played in rugby, I was on the wing. So it's really just all about speed. I was the guy you gave the ball to and hopefully scored if I didn't drop the ball. I didn't do that very often. And in athletics, obviously, I was doing sprinting, so 100 and 200 meters. So everything about my sport was all based on speed. And so when you're, as Manny was saying, when you're thinking about sport, it has to be really specific to the person. So you're thinking, what is my role in this position? Because obviously there are, thinking about the sporting team, there's not just the physios, there's the coaches, there's the strength and conditioning guys, there's the other fitness guys, there's all a massive team that are all looking to make sure the team or that particular player are doing their job. And that's another sort of aspect of it completely, because you get to meet so many different disciplines of life. Obviously, me and Manny are coming from a physiotherapy background, but you're not limited to that. You've got, even like saying if you're working in a gym, being a personal trainer, loads of different aspects and disciplines that you can work on, but the focus it's got to be specific to that person. If it's in the sport, you got to think, what are you working towards? How is that going to help them get towards like what they want to do? Because I'm sure that Manny would definitely have experiences as well, because sometimes initially when you think you're going the right way with someone, and then at the end of it it's like, well, what was that? Or they didn't enjoy, they don't get to their goal, and you're like, all right, well, we've wasted all of these weeks and months, and then you lose that feedback and motivation of thinking, well, this guy doesn't know what he's on about. And that's tough to overcome, but it comes with practice. And Manny's obviously had a lot more practice than I have. There's still times when I do the patient, what on earth is going on there? But it's about getting them to buy into that. I'm sure Manny will elaborate.
I think James the sprinter and James the rugby player would be two different patients. So when we were talking about sport, so James the sprinter, he may ask for different things and James, the rugby player who plays on the wing. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sport. And as a physio, if I was working with James, the sprinter, I might have to use different words, and I might have to give James, the sprinter, different exercises to James, the rugby player. So, for instance, James, the sprinter, won't touch a rugby ball, but James, the rugby player who plays on the wing, will use the ball. So I think that's what James and I are trying to get across to you, that, you know, the way we work with different people in different sports would be different. And I think the one thing that I've noticed is that there are some aspects of the real world and real health that people really...
you ask us to bring
an athlete can be really focused to achieve their goal. And then there's some aspects in the real world in terms of if somebody has surgery, so this is health again, knee surgery, you know, they will really be determined to get better, to start walking sooner, because they know that if they do that, they can go to work sooner and they can play with their children. And that's something quite important, that as a physiotherapist you hold a lot of people's hopes, and you can really empower people.
This is like the cleanest one. It's like have them in the center and all of that.
James, have you seen
like the cleanest version, like especially if we are like dropping these two. I mean, this one I think they are still trying to mask.
Yeah, for sure.
They're dropping consumer benefits, so making it functioning. And then we have the other
to get going.
It looks like it as well, like
to get home. So what I want to do, I want to get back to carry my granddaughter.
Following the talks,
it goes both ways. There's other people
I think this one for me
didn't really even want to have the surgery at the time, and when they're like, oh, and then you sort of not lost that feedback, but you've got
this one feels like
you
it's
have
almost
to
considered
almost
in
win
terms of
over.
like the
I
elements
think
in
that's
it.
almost the beauty of it, because when you get someone
It
initially, you
feels like
first
it's
see
got
them,
a hero.
they don't actually want to do any physiotherapy, and I think, oh, this is just another
Another
person bothering me and really tired, and they're lying in the hospital and day after some surgery. But then you can actually get them to buy into what you're saying. So there's loads of like loads of experience with that. Especially when I was on Facebook, when you're doing physiotherapy at uni, you have to do a set number of placements, and they basically allow you to top tally up your numbers to qualify. So at Nottingham University, where I went, we had the first shift just lectures, and then the second and third
This
shift
one for me does the
placement
concept,
parts.
it's a massive
1 month
thing.
placements
This
over the
for me
last 2
delivers
years.
like 100% bang on.
Initially,
This is the
sort of going
concept.
into that, there
I
were
like
loads
the
of
other one
experiences,
sense of
like the
stage in
same
the
place,
toilet,
obviously,
but
where
I think if you don't settle the idea, I think
patients
it's
were
fun
just
to win.
really happy
Yeah.
to be there. I'm really happy.
So shall we go with this?
happy to drop the duck logo as well, because we have duck incorporated in this.
So, and as a
just in
junior,
one.
when you don't really know what to do,
Yeah, let's try. I don't know if you can do that because you have to show it as a whole, but we can give it a go and see how global
Cool. And
feels
we are
about it.
dropping this as well, right?
Masters,
Consumer
so it's like
benefits.
accelerated, similar
Well,
to
on this
James.
one,
The
maybe
first
we
year
can
you do all the
keep
all
it.
the working with
I just feel like for consistency, if we are having them in one room, then they are gonna start like telling us like they usually do that. Like why did we like to miss them on the next ones?
The key thing that I found was that the placements were
I mean, if we just go with this group, then you could do one with it
good
and
in
without
terms
it,
of
because then
they
that's just
cemented
two
your knowledge,
two
and
visions
they
for
really
this
helped
idea.
you.
So one where we keep it nice and clean, maybe remove the foot pocket and remove the pack, so it's just a key visual, and then you do the second version which leaves the subline and the packs on.
Yeah,
Is
talking
that
about
right?
Choose an elective
Yeah.
Right.
so
So first one,
go to sports team to do that,
No, not
which
all
was
of
really
this.
exciting.
It's not that would be,
For me.
right? By the way,
So yeah, I
talking
think it all
about
depends
the
on what type of person you are as well. I think placements sometimes you just need to probably relax in a placement and get to know the whole team. It's like being in a new team. So that's what I did enjoy as well. Which placement did you enjoy the most, James?
So I think initially, because obviously at that time I was still thinking physios were the only guys that used to run on the pitch. So I had a musculoskeletal placement first off, but I really enjoyed that to So basically get going. And I was actually really nervous for my other ones because I was thinking, this is all I want to do. I don't want anything to do with being on a neurological ward with people that have just had some strokes, or being on a respiratory ward with people who have like loads of lung conditions. But I did actually really enjoy all of those placements. I think they really helped me not only develop as a clinician, but develop as a person, because you're seeing people from like a different aspect, and you're seeing not only how their condition impacts them, but also how their condition can impact, say, their family, how you interact with their family, how you interact with their friends. And I thought that was really, really important for me. So definitely my musculoskeletal placement, so it's the sector I work in now, it's my most favourite, but I think it's just surprising for me, because I was just like, I'm not going to do any of that, that's going to be boring.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. What about you?
I think the sports team placement, but I would say that once I started working, I enjoyed working in like intensive care with the lung conditions. I probably enjoyed that. That was one of the best experiences, because you got to see, again, as I said, you got to see the whole journey. So somebody I got on with, I was there for 6 months, and one of my patients was there for 4 months. So basically, it was the same person I would see Monday to Friday for 4 months. So we got to become good friends, and I used to help the person get better, and then they ended up leaving the hospital. So that was a really good result. And the young man he was really happy. So it was a really good kind of journey that we went through.
Amazing. What challenges would you say that you've essentially faced? You were like thinking even before physio? There's an element of you have to be studious, so you have to kind of look into a lot of the research, and I think sometimes I enjoy the practical aspects. So being in sport, a lot of us who play sport, we like a lot of the practical things, a lot of the treatment or the assessment, but you do have to really be able to write the reports or write some information about a new piece of research, or read a book that's quite detailed and things like that. So I think for me that aspect is where I have changed recently, so I've really picked it up and really got better at that. So I definitely think the other challenges are probably more like just maybe sometimes when I go into a department, so like the respiratory department, trying to work out what I enjoy the most, and not trying to think about getting back to sport, because that's what I always know. I think trying to open your mind and trying to be really open about, what will this be like? And you might find that if you let yourself learn a bit more, experience more things, you actually might find that it's not just sport you like. You'll find that there's more on the health side that you'll enjoy. So as I said, I enjoyed looking after people who have the lung conditions and progressing them. So I'd say that those were the big things, like kind of not setting my expectations and not being kind of one-minded or like one-dimensional, like opening my mind up to other things. That was definitely a big thing that I learned quite early on. And I think the great thing with this profession, I think, is that it can take in so many different avenues. You can do research or and research into sport. You can research health or research, the way that health is reduced in the population. So there's lots of different ways. What challenges do you face? So I think sort of before the course, I think I was, as I sort of mentioned before, I was obviously really sporty. So I'm just thinking, like similar to what you were saying, just thinking about it not being practical and actually having to learn all of this new information for me, which is, as like an 18-year-old, I was just like, I wasn't really bothered to learn that. I was thinking, this is just going to be me being at uni and having a really good time. So it was learning how to have that balance, so that I really struggled with that balance initially, sort of thinking about how this is a course I do want to do, but I need to balance that sort of work and sort of study relationship, which is definitely quite difficult. And also probably another challenge was sort of thinking about where I wanted to do the course and sort of how that would impact me. Because obviously coming from London, it's a really multicultural city. So obviously the patients that me and Manny see are going to be of that category, so really multicultural, all walks of life as well, which is what we see. But sort of going to Nottingham was quite different. Sort of that wasn't as multicultural. So there was definitely a difference in the learning, just like the sort of what the culture, the way of life, which is really important when you're learning. Because what you want is sort of like a shared culture, so people sort of understanding like what's going on. So those are definitely the challenges that I faced. But the course was quite supportive, so there were times when I was able to overcome that quite easily. But that's because you have like a sort of good support network, and I think like mentoring, like Manny is someone that effectively mentors me quite well. It's really quite important in any aspect of not even just physiotherapy, but it could be if you're a coach, if you're a PT, if you're anything, is to have a mentor who's effectively done what you've done. So you basically know where you want to go, which is really important. So Manny's has had a few more years of working as a physio than me.
James is trying to say I'm old, guys. He keeps saying a few more years. He keeps saying this. He's saying I'm old. I'm 10 years older than James, just to let you guys know. So I'm an old man.
He's Uncle Manny. He's Uncle Manny.
At least they call me Uncle.
But no, just in working terms, his experience is obviously going to be greater than mine, which means that he's at a stage where I want to get to. So that effectively inspires me, because I've got someone that looks like me in a position where I want to get to. And I think if you can see someone like yourself who's been there and done that, that's really quite important for me. And I think Manny will obviously elaborate. I'm not sure if he had the same link with someone when he was in my position. I think that's definitely really important.
So I didn't, and thank you, James. Thanks for those kind words. So I didn't, and I felt like sometimes it's good to have a roadmap. So, you know, like on a kind of like if you look at a maze, it's quite nice for you to be able to have somebody who's maybe taken those steps before. Like on a maze, if you could see the route, it's easier to get to the middle of the maze, right? So this is the same in life. So if you have somebody who's already been through some of the directions and taken the turns, they can tell you what the turns look like or feel like, or if it's better for you to take a different turn to them. So that's why I think it's important to have a mentor. And yeah, there's definitely a cultural difference within physiotherapy. But I think that's going to be around in different industries and different positions. But it's important. What we do is we help each other through those processes and support each other, and that's what I feel is important. And that's why I reached out to James, and I think we need to ensure that we are all supporting each other through our profession, and it's important. It's important to give people advice when they're coming up and pull them up. That's my opinion. So it makes it fulfilling to be able to do that. It feels good to give James and a group of people we connect with some information that can help them.
Yeah, so I'm just checking, so we've got a few questions in the chat. Great. Nikki is asking how fast I am. I'm quite fast, Nick. I bet you're faster than me, though. I used to do 100 metres and 200 metres, and my personal best for the 100 metres was 10.7. So the answer.
What?
So yeah, I was kind of quick.
That's amazing.
So I have a little claim to fame, that one. And Israel, you asked does anyone support a football or rugby team? Who do you support? What you going to say?
Manchester United, right?
Yeah. No, you have to leave if you support.
He supports Manchester United.
Who do you support? Man U. Oh, I thought we were mates before that. I'm a Chelsea fan, so we're rivals at the moment.
Pick up the Chelsea.
Who's a Chelsea fan on the chat?
Tiff supports Chelsea.
Really?
Yes.
Chelsea.
There we go.
Carla, you all support Chelsea. Everybody supports Chelsea.
You guys are good. You guys are good. I like that. You'll go far in life if you support Chelsea. They're the best team.
Amazing.
But Man U's third, so we had our revenge, so we're good.
I agree.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions in the chat? Just checking. I think that's it, Manny. Any questions in the chat at the moment?
In terms of, well, Israel, did you say rugby team as well?
Yeah. And there's not much of a range of a rugby team, I would say. That's my opinion. It's mostly about European, like how you got football, you got the Great Cup, and like how you got like all international teams playing against each other.
Yeah.
Like this, that. Way, like same way how you play football, rugby, but you got a different kind of goal set and also like team influence. There's probably more players in rugby than football.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So I think maybe we could talk about more about what we're doing right now. So obviously James works again with musculoskeletal conditions. So do you ever experience working with people who are going back to their sport, kind of just in the general public? I guess you'll experience that when
Yeah, so obviously through my work at Blackheath, I'm their sort of first team physio. So they're a semi-professional club playing in the National One, which is 2 leagues below the Premiership. So they don't train every day. They train twice a week on a Tuesday and Thursday and have games every Saturday. So on a Tuesday after work, I do my normal NHS job and have to go there after, which makes me very tired at the end of the day. And the same again on Thursday, and then they'll have games every Saturday. So I've had loads of experience doing that in terms of like rehabbing them from like the onset. So I'll see them get injured in a game or get injured in a training session, and basically we do is physically create a bit of like an exercise and rehabilitation plan for different moments of that sort of treatment process. So thinking about what they're going to be doing in the first week and thinking about how we can get to return to play. So as what Manny was saying about returning someone to play, what you want to think about is, are they basically able to handle everything they need to on a daily basis, or what they usually do? And that's your decision making whether they're ready to go back or not. And that can be quite difficult. I think I've struggled with that a little bit, especially from it being my first job in sport, because you've definitely got people like the coach sort of shouting at you, being like, when's this player going to be fit? And you're like, well, it could be a while. And then it's difficult to balance that, because you've obviously got your job to do, but then you also want to make sure they're going to be back on the pitch for that game if it's like a cup game, or if they're wanting to be promoted, because you buy into, like Manny was saying, you buy into culture. And especially when you work in sports, most good big sports teams have a defined culture that everyone buys into, which means that everyone, not just the players, will be buying into that, and I'll be thinking, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what we want everyone to get better. I don't know, what have your experiences been with that, Manny?
Yeah, I've had some experiences where players want to be back fitter quicker. So they'll be telling you, I feel fine. And then you look at them running and they're not running in the way they would usually do. So I definitely believe that you do have pressures, so both from players and coaches. And I think in the general public, I've had people leave a session, and I've seen them with a doctor, and the doctor has said, you've got maybe a fracture, or you've got something that you shouldn't be doing exercise with. So this is somebody who is in the general public, and they will go and do exercise. So there is definitely an element where, although you can tell people everything that needs to be said and you give them advice, some people will do what they feel. So that's where the relationship and the communication we were talking about at the beginning is really important. I've had some really exciting things happen. So I used to work at Fulham, and I used to work with some players who now play, like one player plays for Liverpool, and another player plays in the Championship. So and one player plays for Fulham first team. So I've seen people again progress and get to their full potential, which is really, really exciting. And now I also coach people through running, so long distance running marathons. So I have 6 or 7 people who I help to run marathons every year, and I also do some events with Nike, and I go to events and talk about running and how it can be a part of your health and things that help you when you're running. So what you can benefit from in terms of skills and how to manage your day-to-day life, so that running is part of your lifestyle and is easier. And I'd say that running, physio is always evolving. So some of the things we thought that were true when I first started training, and we thought that were good, they've changed. And they're not they're not treatments we use as much, but one treatment we do use as much is generally exercise, and that we'll always use that. So if you like exercise and you know more about exercise, you tend to do quite well in our profession, and you tend to get people better. So sport, fitness, it's all part of exercise and physiotherapy. As James and I have said, it depends on if you're looking for health or if you want to get somebody back to some fitness and then sport specifically.
How difficult for you, Manny, would you say it was being really sporty, and then going to the other aspects of being sort of on the other side of the treatment table, so to speak? Because obviously you were at that stage where you were playing loads of sport, and then for me, I personally find that quite difficult. Like not seeing myself as being one of the sports stars or like that, and then seeing them, you feel like you're in the background almost. How did that impact you at that point?
I think at first I found it really hard to not be playing sport and not playing sport at the high levels. So when I used to play football, we used to have 300 people come to the stadium. So it wasn't amazing, but you still had a crowd and stuff. So I went from that to then being the physio on the sideline, and I think the first few games felt really strange. But then after a while, I realized how important I was when there were just a few experiences where I got somebody better, I helped somebody do what they needed to do, and the team won the game. So it gave me the same feeling of being part of the team. So I'd say that was really important. But then I think when I worked in intensive care and worked with people who were very, very ill, I think that got me to understand that there are so many more things about life in the world that you can investigate and you can experience and you can learn from. And sport's just one small aspect. And it really broadened my horizons and made me realize that, if you can really empower somebody to get over a serious health condition in which they had been in hospital for 6 months, I think that's bigger than being on a football pitch with however many people watching. It made it so much more important. So I would say that at first I found it hard, but the transition is when you start to think a bit deeper about how sport fits into the whole world. I think that's when you start to realize that you're doing a really important job. Physiotherapy is really essential. And you're so important to somebody else's life at times. And it's sometimes it can be really life-changing for somebody to see you and and for you to help them. And that's what I would say that, you can take away from the profession. You will probably change quite a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, well, definitely. We've got 2 questions. We've got one from Israel. Back again, you're asking if anyone has been to a football or rugby stadium. I've been to loads of football stadiums. I've been to Stamford Bridge. I've been to Anfield. I've been to the Camp Nou, which is where Barcelona play. I've been to the Ajax Stadium, which is where Ajax plays. So that's quite fun. I've been to Twickenham for a thing. This is rugby now. So I've been to Twickenham, where England play, and Wembley as well. So I've been to loads of different places. What about you, Manny? Where have you been?
So I support Newcastle, St James's Park.
That's a big one. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. But I've been to St James's Park quite a few times. Been to Twickenham quite a few times. Loftus Road, QPR are probably my second team because I live in West London. I have been to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge, been to Wembley quite a few times. I've been to the Emirates. I have been to Ajax Stadium. I've not been to any Spanish stadiums, but yeah, I've been to quite a few stadiums. And yeah, it's always a good experience to go watch sport.
No, exactly. And Imogen has asked, how has COVID affected our work, REPP? Manny.
So I have been treating and working with people over Zoom. So Zoom is a software system similar to this. So you see somebody on a video and they'll do exercises in their house and I will watch them doing the exercises and explain different ways to move their body so that they get increase in muscle strength and they reduce their pain. I have also been doing some workshops and talking to people in conferences or like classrooms over Zoom. So yeah, I've had to work in a different way, but I've enjoyed it. I've had more time. I don't have to travel to and from like a clinic, a gym space. So it's been enjoyable. I think I'd like it to continue, but I have a feeling that it may not. I have a feeling people want to see me face to face. They want to see me in person, so I can give them more direction face to face. So yeah, that's what I've been doing during coronavirus. How about you, James?
Yes, I've been sort of exactly the same really. Where I work, we've had a bit of virtual appointments anyway. So the first appointment that we do with patients will be a telephone consultation. So we've just basically carried on with that because we sort of shut down all of our clinics, which means that we're not actually having much patient contact, which is obviously, as Manny was saying, quite different as physios. When you're learning about physio, it's all about assessing someone, getting your hands on someone to understand what's going on with them. And sort of go from there, really. So it's been a different way of working, but I've realised, much like Manny, I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been you develop your communication skills to basically tease information out of someone, basically think, well, why are they saying that, and how does that sort of relate into what's going on, which I think is really good. We've got another question from Tiff. What part of what you do has made you feel like you've achieved something? It's a great question.
I think there's always the element where somebody succeeds and does a marathon for me, or is able to leave home and feels like they have less pain. But I think also sometimes it's when I'm able to achieve roles and jobs where I can with Nike. I've been lucky enough to go to Switzerland, and we've traveled to lots of different places around the world. So I always find that being able to get to those places like Portland, I would never have been able to go to Portland, Oregon, which is on the east coast of America. So you had to fly twice to get there, which was an amazing experience. So much natural beauty. And I just found it's been a it's been a real journey to be able to help people along the way, but also experience lots of different things. I also found that just kind of like being able to support James and support some of the people who are in our network has also given me a good idea of how far I've progressed over the last kind of 10 years. So I guess those are one of the, some of the big things. How about you, James?
Yeah, so for me, it's just that it's the little things. It's the little things that patient or that sports person will say, and you can see them effectively either getting out onto the pitch or being able to discharge them from your care. Because then, as a physio, it's the beauty of it. You get to see them from the point from like A to Z, and I think there's not many jobs where you actually get that journey. You're literally taking someone on a journey from the point of when they've come to you in pain, and when you're taking them into sort of where they want to be or where that their patient goal is, which I think is really quite important. And I think it makes you feel like you're actually doing something that helps the world. And I think that's, for me personally, that's amazing. I get to go home quite happy every day when I'm thinking I've actually made a difference in someone's life. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be someone like wanting to play rugby again or be a sprinter. It could just be a little old lady that wants to be able to walk down the road to go and get a newspaper in the morning. And the fact that I can have an impact on that is really quite important. And I think it's really, really beneficial. Imogen, what subjects are good to study at school? Good question.
You probably have more experience of that than me.
Yeah. So for
having just, yeah.
So for me, I think it does depend on the university you want to go to. But for the uni I wanted to go to Nottingham University. I like that, Israel, by the way. Manny, he's calling you tired because you're old.
You're not wrong, Israel. You're not wrong. I don't want to wait for that.
Well, you did answer the question. You should have said the thing that you said. So that now I'm going to jump to conclusions now to say what I put there. So that's my case.
That's fine. So yeah, I think it does depend on where you want to go. So for the I wanted to go to, you have to do either biology or PE. Luckily I did both, so you can do either of those in your A levels. And then I did sociology as well, just because I was quite interested in it. Those are usually the kind of ones you want to do. You can obviously do you can go through usually now you can go for a sort of BTEC route, where you do a sort of BTEC, and then you can go to uni and do a pathway. It just again depends on the uni you want to go to as well. Tiff, has there been any time where you've doubted yourself with a patient? So if you're coming in with all the good questions, loving it.
That's a very good question.
Mine wasn't a question, mine was a joke, so...
Yours were good as well, don't worry, I love it.
Hey, God.
So, I have had lots of doubts, and I think it's normal to have doubts. But I think the other thing is probably being transparent in the way you treat somebody. So saying, this is what I would expect to happen, and if it doesn't happen, we will need to go along a different treatment approach, and explaining that from the research or from your experience what you're prescribing or what the way you're treating is supported, but also explaining that if things go in a different way, you're happy to change plans. So I think being really open with people is really important, even from a student, not even from a kind of professional to patient, just from a student perspective, or if you're trying to progress to study physiotherapy, being really open about your strengths, your weaknesses, and the opportunities. It's just really, really important. So I would say I do have doubts, and I still have them, and it's okay to have them as long as you're aware of them and you explain and illustrate them to the people you're working with, because you can then find out from the person that, oh, it's not really a doubt, because they're confident in, you don't need to worry about that. So that's what I would say. How about you, James?
Yeah, so for me, I was definitely the same. I think when I first started working in sport, I really doubted myself, because even though they weren't professional, I was still like quite a decent level of athlete. So I was thinking, do I have this knowledge to be able to treat them and do my job, which can obviously go both ways. I think a bit of self-doubt is good, so you're not being too overconfident, but it's sort of knowing when to let that out and knowing when to sort of add that in, really. And that sort of goes into your next question, Tiff. Has there been any failure when doing your job? I think for me personally, definitely. I think if you can't progress unless you fail at something. I think a lot of physio, especially rehabbing, is going to be, well, you know what's the best treatment for something, but it's not going to work for everyone. There are going to be things that you do with some patients or some people that doesn't work for them. And as I was saying earlier, they're going to come in all angry, and you're sitting there like, well, I don't know why you've not gotten better. It takes a lot to be able to understand what you've done wrong and self-reflect. Because if you can't self-reflect on what you've done, then your room for learning is quite small. I think Manny will definitely agree. You need to be able to critique yourself, before you can do anything else. It's really important to be able to do that. What about you, Manny?
Yeah, critiquing critique and reflection are part of kind of the physiotherapy profession. So, and yes, in sport, it's one of those areas where if you have doubt, that can definitely influence the way somebody responds to your approach to care. So definitely having an understanding that you have an area of work and an area of practice that you need to be confident with, and go in there and really promote and encourage the person to engage in the recovery plan that you create. So yeah, I think it's, as I said before, I think doubts are normal. I think it's a normal aspect of this profession and quite a few other professions. But it's understanding that, as we say.
Exactly. And Tiff, again, what ethic do you run by when working?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's another good one.
What ethic? Ethic, did you say? So what was the question? Ethic.
What ethic do you run by when working?
Well, we have something called the Standard Code of Practice, which is from the Health Professional Council. So we follow that. So it's like do no harm, understanding the way we kind of market and discuss physiotherapy to the wider world. So there's certain standards that we have to meet. So if we don't meet those standards, we can basically lose our license to practice. So ethically, we already are being governed. Above that, there's an element where we need to make sure that our treatment is a long-term approach. So we're trying to get somebody better for the long term, not the short term. So ethically, I believe that I believe in empowering people and giving them something called autonomy, which means it's the independent kind of ability to make a decision with the information I give them and how they use that decision in the future. So if somebody has had an operation, I can give them two choices of exercises. One exercise is easier, one exercise is slightly harder. The exercise which is easier might make them feel good for now. The exercise which is harder will make them better for the long term, but will take longer to do. So I always give people two options and they can make the decision. And sometimes I try and encourage them to take the harder exercise because that will make them sustain a longer period of health. So that's what I try and work towards. And once I get them to that point, I give them as much information and tell them, why don't you go away for a period of time, see how you're doing, and then come back. If you need me, great. If you don't need me, that's brilliant. But it's being able to give people that confidence that they know that they're in control of their health or their sport or their fitness, and they're getting more knowledge, and they need me less and less and less until they have maybe they might have another injury, they might need me again, but I try and make sure that at some point somebody doesn't need me for the same problem we've been discussing. I think that's my ethic.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Really. We have our code of conduct we work by, but it's obviously you always want to make someone better. Always strive to help make someone improve. I think that's the most important thing and important sort of or motto to go by. I'm just conscious of the time, Jess. Are we all right? Or is Jess still on?
I'm here. You can go on a little bit longer if you want, but probably wrap up in about 5.
Yeah, that's right. Does anyone have any more questions at all to ask?
I'm in the politics next, which starts now. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave this one.
That's fine.
But thank you.
No problem.
You're very welcome.
See you later.
See you later. Anyone?
Goodbye.
Oh, Iran has got one. Have you ever worked with a disabled patient? So I have personally on a placement. So I was working on a neurological ward for, it was like an acute stroke ward, so people who literally had a stroke within the last 24 hours. So I was working on that ward as a physio, and that was actually quite different because you're seeing people who are acutely ill, and like learning how to treat them was really quite interesting, and sort of understanding how you can communicate almost, because obviously our job is to be able to communicate with people, and that was really quite difficult when someone couldn't actually communicate back. And so it again helps you develop your learning styles about how you're going to get your point across to them and effectively assess them at the same time. What about you, Manny?
I have, again, intensive care and on the wards, and yeah, somebody who's had a stroke, and then that's caused them to lose the use of maybe a limb. So I've worked with disabled people in lots of different settings, and disabled athletes. So I find that there are certain things that we have to change slightly, but ultimately they have the same desires that everybody else has in terms of reducing pain, getting back to their sport or health, and yeah, it's really fulfilling work.
Amazing. Israel, how come you guys didn't do drawing in college? So we get to know the human body. That would have been a good idea, I mean, we don't have to draw much with our patients.
That's how I learned anatomy. So I used to draw all the muscles and bones out, Israel, and it helped me learn the anatomy. So you're onto something there. I drew out all the muscles in the shoulder, and that's how I remembered them. And now to this day, I still remember them. So good point.
Yeah, because I was actually, when I'm older, when I'm 18 or I'm 16, I'm going to go to college and become an architect and kind of know all the certain parts about the house and stuff, and probably go back. I'll go to university and learn a little bit more, then go back to college and learn how to fix computers and stuff, and electronic, and do like IT and stuff. Also working in music.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, we got
Great work.
Tiff, have you had any mental challenges, that have affected you when working? Yeah, for sure, definitely for me. I think that goes back into your question about your doubt, because when you doubt yourself, you're thinking that you can't do it, and you're thinking, well, how am I going to put myself in a position I've not really been in, and that's quite difficult, I think. But it's you almost have to expose yourself to it. So that is a mental challenge in itself. I think actually overcoming that mental barrier, thinking that you can actually do it, which you know it, but it's just about putting it into practice. And that's a difficult thing. And you've got a course that isn't just like writing like English or politics, where you're actually just writing things down. With physio, obviously you learn about what to do, and then when you're on placement, you've got to put that into practice. So that was definitely initially going on placement. That was a mental challenge I faced about whether I was good enough to actually put it into practice and sort of how I would do that. So that was definitely a big mental challenge for me. What about you, Manny?
I think so. I think every new experience is a mental challenge. So, and life is good like that. So it gives you lots of mental challenges. And I would say sometimes we need to not look at them as a negative. We should look at them as an opportunity. So mental challenges are part of the process of learning something new and going to university. Everything will probably be a new experience. So, yeah, I would say there have been a few, and I've enjoyed them for the most part. And I'd say that you just need to pace yourself, which people tell me a lot. So just taking your time, working through the processes, working through the different levels of your ability, because some things you're going to be better at than others.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I think we have to wrap up there, but Jess, we can give you our email address if anyone has any more questions. I'm sure me and myself, Manny, will be happy to answer those at another time. So thank you very much, guys, for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, James and Manny. It was really brilliant.
No,
and everybody else, enjoy the rest of Be Inspired. If you haven't yet, make sure you sign up for breakout sessions for the remainder of the week. And obviously watch our final closing show on Friday via our website.